Did you know that a real-life monster was in both Breaking Bad and the movie called Felon? Clifton Bloomfield took the lives of 2 people over the course of only a few days in 2005, and another 3 from December of 2007 to June of 2008. His victims were either strangled or shot, and between the 2 homicidal sprees, Bloomfield wormed his way into the 2 major productions, interestingly playing criminals both times. But once filming was done, Clifton continued his hunt for humans, brutally taking the 3 additional lives. Clifton Bloomfield was born in March of 1969 in Kingman, Arizona. He started his life of crime early at only 10 years old. There was what is being referred to as a BB gun incident, which led a judge to order probation for the boy until he turned 18, as well as sending him to a group home for 3 years. When Bloomfield returned home, the year was 1982, and he was just starting junior high. He rarely attended school, but when he did, Clifton was an average student. His home life, however, was full of turmoil. He bullied his younger siblings and fought often with his father. Meanwhile, his parents were taking him to a clinic where he was prescribed a medication used to treat schizophrenia. At 16, he was locked up once again, this time for a slew of crimes, including stealing a motorcycle, breaking into a church, and prank calling an airline company. This time, the court ordered him to be detained until he turned 18. After he was released, Clifton tried to enlist in the military, but was turned away. After this rejection, he found other means of making money, primarily collecting debts for small-time drug dealers. He found this lucrative as he was rather large at over 6 feet tall. His life grew steadily more violent until he was living with firearms within reach in every room of his house. Bloomfield would report heavy drinking during this time, and in 1989, he and his sister were involved in several robberies of the same convenience store, as well as pizza delivery men. She had been living at his house, and he would later place the blame for the robberies on her, saying that his crime was to let her live with him. At the time, however, Bloomfield took the rap for the robberies and firearms that police found when they busted into his apartment. The spiraling criminal would become a convict, with the judge sentencing him to 14 years. While Bloomfield was in prison, he wrote to his father and sister, who did not respond to the bizarre, self-aggrandizing letters. He also earned an associate degree during this incarceration. He took up a new religion while behind bars, which he shared with his family in the letters. As Bloomfield writes, "I have accepted the organic religion of the Northern Europeans as my own, for it is more than just a religion. It encompasses the Norse culture and lifestyle." In other words, he was into Odin and Thor, complete with a Valknut tattoo on his chest. Valknut translates loosely to Knot of the Fallen. This symbol is made up of interlocking triangles and can have various meanings, such as commitment to a cause. He also had a Viking tattooed on his shoulder, and the bad German World War II symbol tattooed on his hand, though he claims to have gotten it with the original Norse meaning of good luck in mind. It is quite clear that Clifton did not learn his lesson, and once he was free, his crimes escalated. He had moved to a small house in Rio Rancho, New Mexico in 2004. Based on his prior behavior and subsequent crimes, it is likely that he continued earning money through illegal means. But things changed on October 24, 2005, when Bloomfield would veer from robbery and drug debt collections into homicide. That night, he was eating at a Fuddruckers, and when he left, he was approached by a 37-year-old man named Carlos Escabel. According to the creature, Carlos began to chat him up, and though Clifton is not gay, he agreed to go home with Carlos. Whether he went to the stranger's house because he saw Carlos as an easy robbery target, or specifically to satisfy his evil impulses, we don't know. But once the 2 were in the bedroom, Clifton attacked and used a shirt to wrap around Escabel's throat, strangling him. Once he had finished, the creatures searched the apartment for valuables. After taking his first life, Bloomfield seemed eager to repeat the heinous crime, as only a few days later he was out on the prowl. On the night of October 27, 2005, the creature was skulking around when he entered a home that he claims had been left open. When he did not see or hear anyone, he slipped on a pair of latex gloves and began searching for jewelry and cash. The home was owned by an 81-year-old named Josephine Selvage. She was a retired teacher suffering from Alzheimer's, but that did not stop Bloomfield. A violent fight ensued when he entered her bedroom where she was sleeping, and to stop Josephine from screaming, This disgusting creep squeezed the life out of her again using clothing to wrap around her neck. Bloomfield would then search the room, but he did not find any jewelry that he could sell, and there was no cash in Josephine's purse. So this heinous crime was for nothing, and the creature slipped back out into the night. 2 months later, there was a home invasion robbery where a couple was held at gunpoint. Bloomfield was suspected, and when it was discovered that he had left New Mexico that same day, authorities tracked him down in Texas. He was incarcerated for 18 months as he fought the case, but eventually pled guilty for a reduced sentence of probation. Meanwhile, he had found a new source of income aside from roofing and whatever criminal activities he might still have been involved in. He used his appearance and background to act in some small independent movie projects filmed in Albuquerque, and eventually wormed his way into being an extra in an early episode of Breaking Bad. In late 2007, he would also play an inmate in the movie Felon alongside Val Kilmer and Stephen Dorff. Filmmakers would later say that they had wanted to cast people who could pass as violent criminals but did not realize that they had hired a serial killer. Whether or not Bloomfield ever actually appeared on screen in either the show or the movie is unclear. But his newfound success in film did not deter the creature's evil desires. Almost exactly 1 month after filming for Felon had concluded, Bloomfield was once again lurking through the night. On December 4, 2007, he entered the home of 79-year-old Tak Yi and his wife, Pung. Pung was unloading groceries from her Jaguar as Bloomfield crept around the house and entered a sliding glass door. Tak confronted him at the door, but Clifton was able to overpower the old man and gave him a deadly beating. The creature then sought out Pung and took her life using his preferred method. After his arrest, Bloomfield would claim that an accomplice had committed this second homicide of the night. In the following days, 2 magazine salesmen who had been in the area were arrested for the slaying. One of them would even confess, which leads one to wonder what interrogation tactics were used. But these men would be released once the true culprit was eventually revealed and confirmed using DNA found under Tak's fingernails. After getting away with 4 homicides and seemingly being able to walk into film extra roles, Bloomfield's ego must have been going wild. This might explain why he would agree to a hitman-type job 6 months later. The creature agreed to help a 35-year-old man named Jason Skaggs get revenge on a man they knew only as Manny. Manny had flirted with Skaggs' wife and then beaten Skaggs up when he tried to intervene. On the night of June 28, 2008, Bloomfield met with Skaggs and the pair pulled on ski masks and vests. Armed with shotguns, they drove to the house that they thought belonged to Manny and kicked in the front door. Inside, they found a woman who they held at gunpoint and blasted at a man that they assumed was their target. Instead of Manny, they hit a 40-year-old newlywed named Scott Pierce, who had moved into the house only a month prior. When police arrived on the scene, a neighbor came and told them that he had heard the assailants using the name Manny. When they were able to track down the person in question who had sold the home to the Pierces, it soon came up that he was in a dispute with Jason Skaggs. And Jason did not value loyalty enough to not give Clifton's name up as his accomplice. Due to his criminal past and the heinous nature of the allegations, Bloomfield was held without bail while Skaggs was held on a $2 million bail. The shooting of Pierce would be the only crime which Bloomfield shows remorse for. After he was processed, DNA matches began coming in for his prior crimes. The 2 magazine salesmen were released due to the newly discovered connection. Desperate to save himself, Bloomfield asked for a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. As a result of his deal, Bloomfield was not executed, but instead sentenced to 195 years behind bars. This was not the last time Bloomfield would be in the news. In September of 2017, a 22-year-old rookie corrections officer named Matthew Schreiner helped him to escape his cell. Schreiner let him out of the cell and was subsequently attacked by the creature using a toothbrush that had been fashioned into a weapon. Bloomfield took the guard's keys and began letting other inmates out of their cells. It took officials more than an hour to regain control of the portion of the prison reserved for violent offenders. Schreiner would eventually resign and attempt to sue the jail and the private company in charge of its management for putting a rookie guard in charge of one of the worst cell blocks in the prison. He claimed that Bloomfield had tricked him into opening the cell, but was charged with a felony for intentionally letting the monster out. During the riot, one inmate was assaulted in the dropping the soap sense, and another nearly lost his life by having his throat slashed. This leads me to believe that one of these two attacks were the purpose of the riot, meaning that Bloomfield had not stopped his criminal behavior. He is currently still locked up with parole denied at least once. But why he is even up for parole, I have no idea.